Staying over?
Yes.
Would you like to have dinner? Just friends.
I thought you didn't believe men and women could be friends.
When did I say that?
On the ride to New York.
No. I never said this. Yes, that's right. They can't be friends. Unless both of them are involved with other people, then they can. This is an amendment to the earlier rule. If the two people are in relationships, the pressure of possible involvement is lifted. That doesn't work either, because what happens then is the person you're involved with can't understand why you need to be friends with the person you're just friends with. Like it means something is missing from the relationship and why do you have to go outside to get it? Then when you say, no, it's not true, nothing is missing from the relationship, the person you're involved with then accuses you of being secretly attracted to the person you're just friends with, which you probably are. I mean, come on, who the hell are we kidding? Let's face it. Which brings us back to the earlier rule before the amendment, which is men and women can't be friends. So where does it leave us?
Harry?
What?
Goodbye.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Film Bros Podcast. My name is Isaiah Lucas, and I'm joined by my co-hosts.
Abraham.
And Nick.
How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm cold.
Cold. It's getting cold.
Feeling good.
It's so cold.
The leaves are changing colors finally.
Yeah.
It's starting to feel like fall.
I'm
more like
it.
winter to me.
Mm.
I'm not a fan of the
Skin and
cold.
bones.
I'm skin and bones, yeah.
Hey, well, guess what?
You need to take some of my blubber.
Because it's cold out now, you can call me Ranch. Because I'll be dressing. all the sweaters are getting broken out. All the jackets are getting broken out.
Mm-hmm.
Layers are coming out.
I'm loving it.
Mm.
This is my time of year. I love the fall and just the cold.
Half my wardrobe is accessible again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
For real.
So it's good. I love it.
Yeah. I don't know. There's nothing like I genuinely do love this time of year and just the holidays that come around and all this stuff, because I love going out and doing things like around this time. Like I love going to Christmas Tree Lane, and like before going to Christmas Tree Lane, going to a coffee shop and getting a Mexican mocha or some like gas hot chocolate, and then going and driving Christmas Tree Lane with Christmas music playing. And like even though I've been through it
thousands of
times, I'm like it's just a tradition at this point. Or like another one of my the Christmas traditions that my family has is going and watching It's a Wonderful Life in theaters every year. And I think it's playing December 8th this year at the Merced Tower Theater. So if you're in the area, I will be there. So
if you want my autograph.
Yeah, right.
Don't forget to show up for the meet and greet, you guys.
Imagine. Impromptu Film Bros meet and greet. Let's get a jump at like Kai Sinet's. Have a whole riot break out. I'm just kidding.
You're gonna stomp on your card.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I love this time of year and just the types of not only like festivities that happen and you know how into it people get, but just I don't know, the feeling of like the feeling of like being cold and trying to get warm.
You like that?
I like that, where I put on a sweater, I get something hot to drink, and I'm like, oh man,
I like that.
This is great, bro.
I like the feeling of getting warm.
Yeah.
Like when I'm drinking something warm,
and you
and
feel
I
it
feel
go
it,
down.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You're
ooh,
like,
dude, that feels so good.
Yeah.
So I get what you're feeling, what you mean there.
I always imagine like, you know how you get into like on the couch or in bed or whatever, and your feet are icy, freezing cold.
Mm-hmm.
So you tuck it all in, and you get all, and then you just don't move for like 30 minutes, and you feel like after they warm up, you feel just fantastic.
Yep.
I've been feeling that a lot lately.
Yeah. And one of the things that I thought about this movie the first time that I watched the one that we're going to be talking about today was that it's the perfect transition movie. Like from the time, like the times of fall, you know, going into Thanksgiving and then transitioning from fall into Christmas time. But the film takes place over several years. I don't know. I feel like it encapsulates that kind of like warm, fuzzy feeling that you get
Oh yeah.
during this time. And it's also done just incredibly well. And the first time I watched it, I had always heard so much about the film because of its iconic status now. And one day at Rasputin's, Alexa and I were going through the movies and happened to stumble upon it. It was a good price. And so we were like, you know what? We always hear so much about this. Let's just check it out and see.
On a whim.
Yep. And one day decided to pop it in, watched it, and by the end of it, Alexa and I were crying, and we were like, dude, this movie was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time we finished it, I texted the both of you guys and said, when November rolls around, we're going to do this movie.
Yeah, here we are.
And here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you couldn't tell by the title, we are going to be talking about the 1989 film When Harry Met Sally. It is written by Nora Ephron and directed by Rob Reiner,
Yep.
who has also directed films like Stand By Me and a movie called Flipped, I think, that I went and saw in like 2010, and then Misery.
Stephen King?
Yeah. And then a couple other pretty big films. And he's also an actor in a couple of films as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know him notably from The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where he plays an older investor guy. I think it's Jordan Belfort's dad in the movie he plays.
Okay.
But yeah, Rob Reiner's great, man. He's got a lot of hits under his belt, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, not only him, but Nora is as well. She's got a couple other rom-coms that also star Meg Ryan.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you noticed, but he did Sleepless in Seattle and another one called You've Got Mail, I think.
Okay.
And from what I've heard, they're great movies.
Yeah,
So-
I've always heard a lot about Sleepless in Seattle as well. Which
Meg
is,
Ryan is great.
yeah, she is.
Like, I didn't know much about her until this movie. Honestly,
really?
This movie. And I had such a different experience with this movie because I didn't really know much about it, honestly. And I went to the IMDb to, because you said we were doing it. And one of the first photos is like them. And they're like in bed together.
Oh,
and I'm
really?
like, so I had this whole idea in my head of like, okay, this is going to be like a lifelong relationship. There's going to be some ups and downs, similar to maybe a before midnight, before sunrise type transition, And it was really kind of nothing like that.
Yeah.
The movie starts with him macking on another girl.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this movie going to be?
Yeah.
And the whole time I was like thinking to myself, especially from that first scene, I'm like, what is this movie going to turn into? Where is it going? But I loved every second of it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about the film so much is that in the years that I've grown up living in my parents' house, my mom watched rom-coms, and I've saw a lot of mediocre ones. And like it's always like, oh, one of the people, they have a falling out, but then they end up getting back together in the end, and they realize how much they love each other and all this stuff. But this film, they never get together until the end of the film.
Yeah.
And then once they're together, they're like soulmates.
Yeah.
And that's one of the beautiful things about the film, I think, is that you spend this, hour and a half with the characters, and they slowly recognize over years that they are just meant to be.
Well, it's frustrating with how they do it too, because you see, it's so their relationship is so simple.
Yes.
And from an external point of view, you're like, you're perfect for each other.
Yeah.
Just stop, put your egos down, put your freaking pride down, put whatever you're having up down, and just enjoy life. And the whole time they're here but not there, and then they're like falling out. It's just so frustrating, but in the most realistic way possible.
Yeah. Like I think, I mean, we'll get into it a little bit in the categories, but I think one of the perfect summations of their relationship is whenever they are becoming friends again after a couple of years, and then they're trying to get their best friends to hook up with each other.
One of my favorite scenes of all time.
And
dude.
so and then we see in the dinner they're just not connecting with each other, and then the friends, they start connecting with each other. So then they're sitting there having all this conversation, and then they're looking at each other across the table, just being like,
What did we do?
"What the heck?" It's
can't
like
believe this
it's
is
the
happening.
perfect encapsulation of
It
just
is.
everything about their relationship is like, you guys are trying not to make this work, and that it could, but you just don't want it to.
Yeah, it's so easy.
And then whenever you finally realize it, you get that iconic ending where he says, the worst part is whenever you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want it to start as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It hit me. It hit me very strongly.
It's great. So I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. This is my second watch. I can only assume it will be more after this, because I feel like this will probably be one of those yearly occurrence movies where I watch it around this time. And my love for it will probably only grow from here. So I just, based off the first watch, what are we thinking? Just cliff notes before we dive in.
I liked it. It made me kind of root for the guy, and like, 'cause you know how you usually watch love story movies and you root for the girl, and this movie kind of you rooted for the guy, and I was like, okay, heck yeah, like it's kind of 'cause you can kind of relate to some of the things that he says.
Now, do we think this because we're all guys?
That has to be.
I probably think
Right?
so,
It
yeah.
has to be.
And I think that's another one of the great things about the film is that guys watch this and they're like, I understand Harry.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
women watch it and they're like, I
I don't
understand
get
Sally.
Sally's a goat.
I don't get Harry, you know? And that's one of the great things, I think, is that it not only does it poke fun at like the stark differences between men and women in relationships, but it also like is able to take those differences and show you that like not all differences have to be bad. They don't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, and so it was a funny and it was a good watch. I enjoyed it. I found myself just watching it and not even typing anything down. So my thing is, I can remember things, but it was a good watch, and I'm definitely excited to return to it.
Yes.
I'm gonna return to it for sure.
This movie, I was watching it, and it was. I think I watched it on Saturday. One of the days. My schedule was insanely busy, so I was watching it, knowing that I had to pause it to go to. It was going to my mom's for dinner. That's what it was. And usually it's not a big issue for me. I can watch, I'll pause it and come back, and I'm just as invested as I was, or not invested if it's a bad movie. But this time, 4:45 rolls around, I'm having to pause it, and I look at Lisa, I'm like, I don't want to pause this. Like, it felt so good to be in the moment. I just told her, I was like, I'm just watching two people talk, and I love it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to pause this. It was one of the times where I was like, I wish I could be here and finish it.
Yeah.
And it still was good coming back to it, but it was a interesting feeling there.
all right.
So
Was this your first watch?
yes, first time.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear what we think about it as we dive into the categories here. It is streaming on a couple of things, but I think only if you subscribe to Showtime. So you can watch it on like Paramount Plus if you've got the Showtime add-in or whatever, or Hulu, you know, things of that nature. So if that's something that you have, go check it out. It is a great movie. I would recommend checking it out if you do want to watch it or if you're curious about it. And we're going to be talking about spoilers as per usual. So if spoilers are not your thing, pause the episode and come back once you've watched it and hear what we have to say about the film. If those things don't bother you, then continue listening. But as always, we're going to go ahead and start off with our first favorite scene.
What do you got?
I botched that. We're going to start with our first category, being favorite scenes.
Yes. What do you got?
And my first favorite scene does not start until we go to the first diner on the road trip.
Oh, okay. When they've introduced to each other, they got 18 hours ahead of them to go to New York.
Right.
They go. Yes.
What are they arguing about? They're
all kinds of things, man.
but at this point, they're arguing about something specific when they're walking into the diner, 'cause
They're arguing. I forget exactly what. I just know the catalyst of the conversation. Whenever they walk in, and he's like, "Well, if that's happening, it's obviously because you haven't had good
Oh yeah.
yet." And
Humping
she's like,
and bumping.
"Yeah," and she's like, "Yes, I have."
And
he's
everyone's like,
and he's like, "No, you haven't." And she says, "I too have had good," like really loud, and everyone's all,
yeah, it was my first bro moment.
yeah, they all kind of look, and she kind of like, "Oh, I just said that out loud." This is
Yeah.
kind of wild. But yeah, that's my first favorite scene. And to give a little context as to how we get here,
We need to, because these are two very different characters. And
Yes.
it starts off.
and I think they set the characters up so masterfully well.
I love that. I love how they do that.
It's great. We get introduced to our character named Harry, who is currently dating a woman named Amanda, and they're talking about how much they love each other and how much they're gonna miss each other when he goes off to New York. They're making out in Chicago and all
Dude.
this stuff, and this yellow
Sedan.
sedan. Yeah, I was gonna call it a bug, but it's not a bug. this yellow car comes up and kind of, pulls up on the side of them and kind of sits there for a moment and then turns off the engine. And it's who we come to know as Sally. And she's kind of sitting there watching Harry and Amanda just make out with one another. And she's kind of like, okay. And then starts going, beep. Oh, sorry. Kind of breaks him up a little bit. And that's when we realize that Harry is hitching a ride with Sally to New York because the both of them are going to be going to New York. They're trying to, pursue job opportunities and things like that. And from what we know, Harry's going to be there for a couple of months before he goes back to Chicago to be with his girl, Amanda. And the reason that
I love you so much.
That Sally and Harry even know each other is because Sally and Amanda are friends with one another. And so, they end up throwing all their stuff into the car. They, give a parting goodbye and then start on their road trip from Chicago to New York. And so as they're driving over, they, talk about anything and everything because Harry says, we got 18 hours to go, so tell me your life story. Tell me about you. What's the, and so they end up going through these conversations where, they just really get to know one another. And I think one of the things that you just really get to know, like, the vast differences between these characters and just the, like, not only the physical acting, but the types of questions that are asked. Like, Harry is a guy that, like, really just flies by the seat of his pants. He's got, like, 2 bags with him.
There's almost nothing.
Yeah, and then Sally is the type of person who has, like, the car's almost full, with just her stuff, right? And so, he gets in the car and he's, like, scrounging around in the back for some grapes. And is like, you want some grapes? And she's all, no, I don't like to eat between meals. And he's like, okay, and just starts eating and, like, spitting out the skins and all this stuff and, like, getting them on the window and all this stuff. And she's kind of like, who is this guy? This is insane. This
is not
nasty.
what I signed up
for. This is
for.
not what I wanted. This is so unbearable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he starts, asking her questions and, it gets to the point where he's like, do you ever think about death? Like, he's like, I think about death way too often. It, like, occupies my mind all the time. And, Sally's the type of person where, like, I don't want to think about that. Like, I have life to live. I don't want to think about death. And then Harry's argument back is that, by the time you're dying, you won't be prepared for it because you didn't think about it at all. Meanwhile, whenever I do, I'll be ready, and all this stuff. And he just talks about, how dark he is and, kind of just how vastly.
The last page of every book.
Yeah, he does just something where he's like, I read the last page of every book that I read just so I know how it ends if I ever don't get to come back to it.
Yeah, like,
if I die.
He's like, that's how dark I am.
Yeah, and it's just 2 very, very different characters. Yeah. And by the time they're going up to this diner, they're already talking, and eventually that topic gets brought up that I talked about as they're walking in. And one of the things that I just really love about this scene is that, again, we get to really see the vast differences between the 2. Like we had said, being intimate is something that Harry talks very openly about and, like, is not very much ashamed of it, where it feels like Sally kind of is, and she doesn't want to talk about it because it's private. And Harry, starts talking about, saying, oh, you've never had any good ones before. Probably that's, why you haven't had this happen to you or something. And she's like, I have. And he goes, with who? She's like, I'm not going to tell you. He's like, okay, don't tell me then. And she's like, his name was Shell Gordon. He goes, Shell, short for Sheldon. And, watching him degrade Sheldon over the time is so funny.
He's like, oh, no, you didn't really have anything good.
Yeah. And he's like, you can't. He's like, Sheldon is a guy that will do your taxes or
give you a root canal.
Yeah. He's like, do something like that. He's like, but you're not going to be.
His last name, too, and, like, combining it. It was like.
No, I think he calls him the Wonderschlong.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, it's so funny, too, where he's like, pull my hair, Sheldon.
Yes,
like,
yes.
He's like, you're not saying that name when it's happening.
No,
it's
no.
That's not the name you say.
Yeah, and
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and so she's like, I can't even believe we're having this conversation. And he's like, it's okay. You probably haven't yet. You think you did, but you haven't, and that's fine. You just haven't had that many experiences yet or something. And so eventually the conversation devolves into them ordering food. And this is where we get to
freaking complicated order.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that, like, we get to just see even further how different these guys are. Harry gets his chance to order, and he's like, "Give me a hamburger."
That's
and
it.
that's
Yeah,
it.
it's just let me have number 2.
Yeah, and then Sally is like, I want the green salad with the vinaigrette on the side. I want the apple pie a la mode. I want the apple pie heated up with the ice cream on the side. And if you don't have ice cream on the side, then I would just take the apple pie cold. It's fine. And
Or if you have whipped topping, I'll take whipped topping. But if it's not,
but if it's not if it's in the can, I don't want it.
Yeah, and I'm just sitting here like, bro.
Yeah,
Just
and
pulling out
the entire
I
time
would tell her
Harry-
at that point, I just get out of my restaurant.
Yeah, and the entire time this is happening, Harry's watching her, and he's just like,
Yeah, bro. Honestly, if I went on a date like that, I think I'm walking out.
No. You would? You'd walk out?
Yeah.
That's a yes.
no games, bro. I guess not.
So you're ordering. No, I'm going to order for you.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that
Don't
these.
be. I know, dude.
You just don't like a picky eaters?
I'm a picky eater, but I'm not that picky.
Yeah, I was gonna say this guy said if you don't get Dino chicken nuggets, we can't be friends, bro.
I'm a very picky eater. I mean, but like that, nah, bro.
Yeah, and it's funny, and one of the things that I like is that this furthers the divide between the two. It shows just how different these people are, and I also love too that like after they're done eating, Harry's kind of looking at her and is like,
You're just attractive.
he's like, you know, you're quite attractive, and she's like, how could you say that? You know, you're going with my friend. Are you trying to make a pass at me? And he's like, no, I'm not trying to hit on you or anything like that. I'm just saying, objectively, you are attractive.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's making a pass, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, I'm dating somebody or I'm seeing someone and stuff. And he's like, okay, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't take away the fact that you are objectively attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that eventually leads into them leaving the diner and all this stuff. And I eventually love too that like whenever they get into the car to start driving away, they just continue their conversations with one another. And I don't know, it feels like we are watching these people who have very different outlooks on life, very different thought processes, try to understand one another. And then we like get to see how crazy they think the other person is once they hear their thoughts, you know?
It sets it up to where it's like he is there's like some like interesting sparks there, but it almost feels like it's a relationship that will never go anywhere at the end of it, because she's like, well, I would never date you anyways. And like even when they are saying goodbye, like when they finally get to New York, it's like, all right, never see you again, like goodbye forever.
Yeah.
And it just feels like, how are they going to reconnect? How is this going to happen?
Yeah.
You know, because he was kind of like really brash at the very beginning too, saying a lot of like really controversial statements, saying like men can never be friends with women because all they're going to think about is doing it with them. And, and she doesn't obviously believe that way, and he's pleading his case and all that. And it's like to come off to someone for your first experience with them in that kind of way, it's almost like it's either a real risk or you're going to get burned.
Yeah. Or we see later down the line, it makes a person unforgettable.
Yeah.
Because even 5 years later, they run into one another, and she's like, I know that guy.
That's actually my next favorite scene.
Yeah. The 5-year gap is crazy.
Because it's funny how they run into each other. And she's macking on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like not like waiting, but he's like a chismoso. Kind of, because
he knew the guy.
He knew the guy, and he like double takes. I'm sorry to overtake. Stop. Are you done with your scene?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. And he like double takes and goes back, and he's just staring at him.
He's like, Joe,
like, and then same way that Sally was when he met Harry, just staring at him, just waiting for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do that purposefully. They have a lot of like these symmetrical mirrored shots.
Which it's perfect because
it is.
It just shows how they interacted and how they can connect.
Yeah.
And I liked it because she was trying to play like she couldn't recognize him, and you can tell that he recognized her, but he was playing it cool because she was like making it obvious.
Yeah.
And it just made me laugh because I was like, I feel like we would all do something in that instance. It was like, oh shit, I hope we don't recognize him. Like, oh, you don't recognize me right now? Like, look at me.
Yeah.
And and then it goes into the airplane
And
Where-
of course, he's right behind her. Wasn't that so funny when she's like,
He pops out of nowhere.
yeah, and he's all, University of Chicago, 1977, right? And she goes, oh my gosh, I knew it was you.
yeah.
And like, I thought it was funny too, where he's like, your name is Sally, right? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, did we ever?
Yeah.
Like, she goes, no, we did not. And he's like, okay, I was just trying to make sure.
And
Like,
the guy that's right next to him, right next to her, excuse me, is listening to the conversation. She goes, we drove to New York, from Chicago, and that's how we know each other. And he
Yeah.
goes, oh,
you wanna sit?
okay.
He goes, oh, okay. You guys want to sit next to
And
one
he-
another?
And he's like,
he's immediately
yes.
like, yeah, that's great. Yeah, come on. Okay. Yeah.
Such a good scene.
It's so good. The quotes here too are fantastic. Like there's a bunch of scenes where she's like, you remember when you said that? And he goes, no, I didn't say that. She goes, yeah, you did. And he goes, oh yeah, see, I told you I did say that. Like he's like he's trying to like just
Yeah.
completely.
He says the word. It's like I think he says the word wrong, and it's like tomato. It's like the song. It's
yeah.
tomato.
Yeah.
He says the word wrong, and then she
Yeah.
corrects him.
He's like, yeah,
and
that's
he
what I
goes,
said.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I said.
And I think that's
It's just
speaking
smooth.
of that song too. I think it's the perfect use of the song in this movie
Yeah.
Dude.
because the whole
All of
song
the song
is,
choices are perfect.
and not only that, but like the actual lyrical content of this song
Yeah.
with Louis Fitzgerald, and I've always heard it with not Louis
Louis
Fitzgerald.
Armstrong?
I'm mixing them. Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald.
Ah.
They usually do a duet where it says, "You say either, I say either."
Yeah.
Either, you know, and they eventually the song goes to where like, oh, you do things differently than I do, let's call this whole thing off.
Yeah.
And then eventually they say, but if we call the whole thing off, you know, we might get our hearts broken. So then eventually that says, we better call the calling off. And it's this
That's exactly
cute,
what happens.
it's this cute song where they say like, oh, you do things differently than I do, but that just kind of makes me love you more. And like originally we wanted to end this, but now we better call off the ending of things because it just makes me love you more.
That's the whole movie, man.
Yeah, it's a great use
I
of the
hate
song.
you.
What?
I hate you.
Why?
This freaking guy.
Oh, the ending, yeah. But yeah, I just love watching these people have these conversations and even being on the plane. I forget exactly what it is that they talk about where
I think doesn't he explain that he is?
he's getting married.
Yes.
Yes.
he's getting
And she was
married.
like, really? You're getting married?
Yeah. She's like, there's no way you're getting married.
And he's like, yeah, I am. I'm getting married to this woman named Helen. And
She's a lawyer?
She's a lawyer. She's the love of my life. And I'm really excited. And she's like, wow, I can't believe you of all people are getting married.
Yeah, and
And-
it's funny too because they're getting off the plane on those elevators, and he's like, "You want to go get lunch as friends?" And she's like, "I thought you said we couldn't be friends." And he goes,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, you're right. Let me make an amendment to that rule." And he's
Yeah.
like, "If we're both in mutually exclusive relationships, then we can." And then he even like circles back to it where he's like, "But then one person's gonna get jealous and think that they love this person because they're spending so much time with them, and then it all comes back to we can't be friends."
Yeah.
Harry kind of reminds me of a person who just says his intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he doesn't know when to shut up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he's just gonna say what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I even think it's funny too whenever they like eventually decide that they're not gonna have lunch with one another, and they're like, "Okay, fine,
And they
fine,
just-
bye," and they start walking with one another,
And he's like,
and he's like, "Okay,
Okay, I'll
I'll
stay
I'll
back."
slow down so you can go ahead," and just kind of stands there a little bit. Yeah, it's funny.
"It's so good." And then another 5-year gap.
Yeah.
Freaking blows my mind. I was like, how many years are passing?
Mhm.
It's crazy because they look the same, but just getting older.
Yeah.
Like in
They're-
that scene, he had a beard. I think he has a beard in the
in New York.
in New York.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, when this 5-year gap comes up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that one of you guys' favorite scenes? It's
Yeah.
not like the biggest, but we realized that her and Joe break up.
Yes.
And we also realized that, dude, I love the scene when we're getting like they're both. They do that same thing where it's like a cut
Mhm.
to her, cut to him, cut to her, and she's talking about her breaking up with Joe and how she's fine with it. And then we're getting a point of view of him saying like they're at like
They're at a
game
Giants game,
Yeah.
a New York Giants football game.
with one of his friends, and he's like, "The suckiest story happened to me and my wife. We're basically getting divorced."
Yes.
And I love the scene too where he's like, the worst part is that I asked her like, "Do you even love me?" And she said, "I don't know if I ever did." And then
And
the
they
writer,
keep
yeah,
doing the wave.
And
as
he
it's
was
happening.
his friend was just like,
no, No, his friend is like, now that is particularly harsh. I should know. I'm a writer.
Yeah.
I was like, this is so good. It felt so genuine, and it was like a real touching moment while like cutting it with the funny jokes and
and it staying a part of the wave and doing all that stuff.
right.
Yeah,
But now we're getting to the point to where if they did want to connect, if they did finally find each other, they're both
it's
free.
the perfect moment.
It's the perfect moment.
Yeah.
So
And eventually they end up reconnecting at a bookstore, and Harry happens to be creeping on Sally in personal growth, and her friend, who's Carrie Fisher, notices and is like, hey, you got some guy staring at you in personal growth. She looks over there and she's like, oh, that's Harry. He probably doesn't even remember me. He, we took this big road trip and all this stuff, and he comes up and goes, Sally Albright. And she's like, Harry, I thought that was you. And they start kind of talking with one another, and then eventually this kind of friendship sparks amongst them, and they kind of, go their separate ways. Once they start walking out of the bookstore, and once they go out the bookstore and they're walking with one another, she kind of says, I remember you saying, he's like, I remember you saying that women and men can't be friends because the intimacy part gets in the way. And he's like, I do remember saying that. And is it too late to say I'm sorry? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, what's the statute of limitations on apologies? And she goes, 10 years. And he goes, all right, well, I'm getting it right in under the wire right here. And, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought that way. It was wrong of me. And, eventually they decide they want to get lunch with one another. And so they do. And then just this friendship amongst the two of them just starts to blossom. And it becomes like so sweet to just watch them not only hang out with one another, but also two people who immediately thought that they would never speak to one another again just because of how different they are now coming together because of how different they are, and like the things that made them so different to the people that they loved in their lives, they are now being kind of like scorned for by them. Right. And we get these like scenes of Sally saying, originally when I was with Joe, I didn't want kids. We didn't want to anything like that. We wanted to be able to go anywhere on a moment's notice and to be able to just, love on each other whenever it is that we wanted. But the thing is, with, all the time that I was with him, there was never going anywhere on a random moment's notice or doing this, anytime we wanted. Yeah. There was never that. It was always just being comfortable with one another. We never got to do the things that we said we wanted to do. And so, whenever I told him I wanted a family and he told me he didn't,
that's it.
I noticed like I shouldn't be in this anymore. Like I'm running out of time. I'm 27. I need to find somebody who is going to, want the same things that I want. And like I'm running out of time if I want to have kids. Like it's getting to be a joke at this point. And then we get somebody like Harry who is like, I thought I found the person. And then they told me that they didn't love me anymore. Yeah. And now I am, I'm back in this dating game, even though I don't want to be, because that was the one thing I was trying to get out of by being married was I didn't want to date my wife. I didn't want to date anymore because now I have a wife and it's off the table. I don't got to do it anymore. He's like, but now I'm back out here and I don't want to do it again. And, we get these just scenes throughout the movie where they just are hanging out because they're really the only people that they have for each other, in their lives. And it makes for such tender moments, but also really funny moments at some points too.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he even talks to his friend like, she's one of the only girlfriends that I've had that I've like just been able to be open with.
Yeah.
I can tell her anything.
Yeah.
And it's just seeing them be tender to each other it's wholesome.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that line where he's like, yeah, I told her about how I was with this girl one time and I made her meow.
Dude.
And he's like, you made her meow? Yeah. What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, I could tell you this stuff because we're guys and, we're comfortable with one another. But it's weird. It's different with her because, like, I feel no shame. I feel no judgment. Yeah. Nothing like that. Like, I can just tell this woman anything and she will accept me for who I am. Yeah. And I love it.
The dynamic is weird, too, because when they first are starting this whole friendship reconnection thing, it's like, she's encouraging him to go out. She's getting his house situated because it was just him alone.
Yeah.
No carpeting, nothing. She took everything.
Yeah.
His wife. So she's like kind of reorganizing his stuff, making it all better, and like really encouraging him to get back out there.
Yeah.
To figure out what it is you truly want, who it is you really want.
Well, she's being the friend that he needed. She's kind of like she's contradicting what he said. Like, you can't be a friend, but she's being the friend that he needs.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's what's so nice when after 10 years they're realizing, oh, finally, like they can be friends. They're together.
Yeah, it's literally personal growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why it's so good.
Yeah. But my next favorite scene from there is whenever they're on the phone with one another watching Casablanca together.
Yeah.
And I love the way that it was shot.
It's like half and half.
half and half.
It's
They're like
so
it both
cool.
looks like they're in the same bed, but they're in different beds. You can very much tell. And like Harry's room is very dark. It's very masculine looking, whereas Sally's room is super bright and floral looking and very lively. And they're both watching Casablanca at the same time on the phone with one another and just talking about the movie with one another and just hanging out. And
it's the movie that they were talking about when they first met. Too,
yes,
huh?
yeah, and that was one of their points of contention where she was like, I would never marry a bartender just because I loved him. That's how the freaking diner conversation started.
Yes.
Because he was like, I'm telling you right now,
Over
if you found a good guy who, just because he owned a bar, but he gave you the best of your life, you wouldn't be with him is crazy.
Yes.
You would know.
That's what it was.
And she was like, I have. And I wouldn't be with some bartender. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Yeah. But they're sitting there watching Casablanca again.
I've never seen the movie.
Neither have I.
Yeah.
Cinema sin right here, unfortunately. I know it's on my list. But they talk about they're watching it on the phone with one another and, just commenting on the movie and all this stuff. And I also love their conversation about high and low maintenance women.
She's high
with
maintenance.
one of them. And I have this whole conversation blocked off, which I really liked. And Harry starts with, there are two kinds of women, high maintenance and low maintenance. And Sally says, which one am I? And Harry goes, you're the worst kind. You're high maintenance, but you think you're low maintenance. And Sally says, I don't see that. And Harry says, you don't see that? Waiter, I'll begin with the house salad, but I don't want the regular dressing. I'll have the balsamic vinegar and oil, but on the side. And then the salmon with the mustard sauce, but I want the mustard sauce on the side. On the side is a very big thing for you. And Sally responds back and says, well, I just want it the way I want it. And Harry says, I know, high maintenance. And then I think the scene ends right after that. Harry starts saying that, he thinks he's going to go to bed because he's coming down with something. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll just moan the night away as I sit here and grovel in pain and misery and all this stuff. And he just sits there on the phone going, oh. And eventually she's like, okay, good night. I'm going to bed. She goes to bed. And she goes to bed happy and, ready to go to sleep. And we get him just kind of sitting there in bed just being like,
what's the
and I don't know. I feel like it's such a difference because it feels like Sally is getting sort of something out of this relationship. She kind of feels like maybe it's going somewhere. That's why she's happy. She's talking on the phone with somebody again. Whereas Harry can't stop thinking about the situation that he's in. My wife left me. And now I just sit here and talk to this woman like it's not going anywhere. And what is my life becoming, right?
Yeah.
They have two very different understandings of what their relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perfect. I love it.
Yeah. My next scene is the date scene. So I don't know if you have anything before that.
The date scene.
double date?
The double date scene.
Oh, not faking it in the diner? Is that before?
No, that's an a bro moment for me.
Yeah,
Not one of my
that's a
favorites.
big bro moment.
I sat there with my jaw open. Sitting there like, no way she's doing this right now. Because I thought she was going to just be like, just be quiet about it,
No,
and she
she
starts
went.
going in.
Yeah. I like the scene. I think it's funny.
It's
a
definitely
funny
funny.
scene.
It is
for
very
sure.
funny.
It makes me, dude, imagine seeing that in public. Like,
Oh yeah, it's incredible. It's insane. But it's become one of the most iconic scenes
Yeah.
in the movie.
When you really think about it too, because the scales are kind of tipped because Harry is always kind of like, oh, you're high maintenance, you're all this bad stuff, all this, and
Yeah.
then now she's like, you really think that every woman you've been with, you've made that
Yeah.
happen to her? And he's like,
yeah.
I
He's
know
like-
it.
he's- I know. I
So
know a difference.
The scales are tipping back. He's not all that great either. She's
Yep.
kind of putting him back in his place,
Yep.
which is why it's so necessary.
Yeah, and I love that she goes to the extent that she does to prove a point to Harry that he doesn't know
Yeah.
whether or not a woman's
It's-
faked it or not.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny to watch him be put in that awkward position, and not only that, but like the balls that she has to
Dude.
do something like that.
That is wild.
Yeah, it's great, and I love watching Harry's face the whole time it's happening because he's just like, oh, what's happening? What are you doing? Stop! This is weird, right? And then eventually it ends with that older lady kind of looking over and saying, "I'll have what she's having." It's super funny.
It
Like
is.
it makes for such a good scene between the two, and like you had said too, it goes to show that like both of them are high maintenance, thinking they're low maintenance, and Harry just hides his a little bit more than freaking Sally does. You know?
Yeah, the flaws that they put up with,
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. But the next one for me as well is the dinner between friends.
The double date scene is fantastic. It's again one of those things where, it's the cut shot between the two couples, and it's the same thing, but here's the men over here, here's the women over here, and they get to a point, Harry and Sally, where they have like had no luck in dating anyone. So Harry and Sally both think it's a great idea to set them up with their best friends and go on like a double date. So Harry's gonna be, I think her name is Alice, or
I think so.
I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
And then Jess is his best friend.
Yes.
Is gonna go with Sally, and they think they're gonna hit it off. Even gets to the scene where Jess is like, well, is she gorgeous or is she beautiful? Why don't you want to be with her? What's wrong with her? And I laugh so hard when he's like,
You told she's attractive and she has a good personality.
like, you can't be one of the two. Usually when you start with good personality, that means she's not good looking.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those stereotypical scenes of like being scared and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. But when they finally get to the date, it's not working.
Yeah.
You see like the cogs aren't turning.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're both having their conversations together, and she's really not.
Yeah. Marie, it's her name's Marie.
Marie, yes.
Yeah. And Marie is obviously not interested in what Harry is saying.
all.
Sally isn't interested in what Jess is saying. And it gets to this like stalemate between all four where like there's just these awkward silences.
Yeah.
Nothing's really happening. And then Marie says a quote from a paper that she read. And it just so happens that Jess was the writer of that quote. And he goes,
I wrote that.
I wrote that. I've never had somebody quote my own writing back to me. And she goes, well, I just thought what you said was so genius. Wow, that's crazy. You really wrote that?
Yeah.
And they just start hitting it off between the two.
Immediate connection. Like,
Yeah.
you already knew they were going to get married, have kids. You see it.
Yeah.
Play out on that dinner table right
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
That's why I loved it so much, because they immediately, and then you see just them be like,
What just happened?
what just happened? And
Like-
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, we just put this together. Like, this is our fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that, like, as they're leaving the restaurant, they're both separate, the two girls and the two guys, and they're basically both I keep trying to call them Hallie. Sally and Harry are both telling their partners or their friends, like, yeah, I don't mind if you go with them, but just don't do anything tonight because she's real hurt. We're vulnerable. Like, just don't make a pass tonight.
Yeah.
But I not like, if you want to, go for it. I'm not worried about it. And they're both saying that as they. I love like that as they get together, they like taxi. They immediately go home together.
yeah.
It's so good. They waste zero time
Yeah.
hitting it off with each other.
Yeah.
And I just loved it.
Yeah. It's funny. And I like that too. Like as soon as they leave with one another, we are left with Harry and Sally
Mm-hmm.
once again looking at one another like it's just us again.
Mhm.
Like where do we go from here now?
It's like the only person that fits me is you.
yeah.
No matter how much blinders I have on, it's you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why it's just fantastic.
Yeah. Any other favorite scenes from there?
I don't have any more.
My last one for me is the last New Year's party.
New Year's
The
party.
ending.
The ending is so. It's like a bro moment,
Mm.
but it's not like a bro moment also because it's super cute.
Yeah.
That's
But
good. Well, let's talk about context. One of my favorite scenes is it's the whole. Let's start with the charades scene.
Okay.
because there's a whole group of people, and you finally see that Jess and Maria are actually like together,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and like I don't think they've gotten married at this point yet, right?
No.
No,
No.
they're just dating.
But they're together. They're exclusive, and they're doing this whole charade things. Sally's got her own dude, and Harry's got his own girl. But you see, like, there's these just subtle hints of like, Harry sees Sally kissing on him, and he like just lingers a little longer, where it's like kind of bothering him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just him, because Sally does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there is again that same thing where they're saying the same exact thing. Like, what do you really think about the girl he's with?
Yeah.
She's not really that good, is she? Like,
Mhm.
she's making all these bakeries. He doesn't even like sweets.
Yeah.
and he's saying the same thing about his like tall boy or whatever.
Mhm.
And I forget. Oh, he taking her to a baseball game. She doesn't even like baseball or something.
Yeah.
Like, they're not compatible, and they're both subtly recognizing that that's not who they should be with.
Yeah.
But they're just not able to communicate it to each other yet.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all kind of scenes like that where they just have this tension underneath everything. But it's when he gets the phone call late at night, and she
finds out that Joe's getting married.
yes,
Yeah.
and that is like devastating to her. So he goes over and is trying to console her, and she's going through it. And he's, there for her, hugging her when she needs it, tissues when he literally is holding tissues. She grabs it and just throws it on the floor.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny. And they end up
Sleeping with one
What do you
another.
do? What do you do in that situation?
it seems like exactly what they want,
Yeah.
which is why I felt like it's happening. But
Yeah.
I hate that in the morning, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
It's like
brings
it's-
all this awkward tension, and it just feels so wrong.
Yeah. And I think that one of the
'Cause
things
that's your friend.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that I like that plays out about it is that during one of the million of conversations that we hear, Harry says, like, the one thing that I think about after I'm done
Is how long
is
I got.
how long do I have to lay here, and like how much time is an acceptable amount of time for me to lay here until I want to leave? Is
Yeah.
30 seconds enough? Like, or do I have to stay here all night? And like you can see that thought play out on his face
I know.
right after they do the deed, and she's like cuddling
Dude,
up on
it's
him.
one of my favorite scenes.
She's all happy and can't believe what just happened,
It
and
zooms
it
out,
zooms out, and
he's
he's
like-
just kind of like
He's just
staring there, and she's like, "I'm gonna go get some water. Do you want something?" And he just keeps going, "Okay, sure, yep, whatever you want, yep."
Yeah, it
and-
just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and so they end up going to sleep, and once they go to sleep, she wakes up to him already fully dressed and is like, "I gotta get going. You got work. I got work, and you do too. We need to get ready for the day. So I'll talk to you later." And they end up leaving, and this is where we get another great scene
One of my favorites. of
on
all
the
time.
phone. Go, take it.
There's like 4. The way it's shot is the exact same, where the bed is cut in half. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's
bed.
a bed.
the bed's in the middle,
You're
but
right.
it's with Marie and Jess in the middle.
It's so hard to kind of describe what's happening, because it's like a cluster of.
it's a conference call essentially.
It really is.
And it's the couple that they set him up with on the same phone on
2 different
two
phones.
different
different
phones.
phones because they
talking
each
about the
have
same
one.
thing.
Dude.
They each have one on each nightstand, which
Yeah.
I think is kind of wild.
Yeah.
Because when they're just making out, and they goes, "It's yours."
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh! And basically, Harry's calling
His best friend.
his
Jess.
best friend to talk about what just happened, and Sally's calling her best friend to talk about what just happened. As per you should, I feel like everybody does when something like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "What do we do?" But it felt good. But I don't feel good anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I feel guilty for leaving. She feels embarrassed for doing the thing and him
Yeah.
being gone. And it's
And
just, and we're like getting the conversation through every side. And they're like holding the phone. They're like,
Yeah.
"What's happening?" Whoa.
Yeah.
Like
Dude,
going
when
back
they-
to it.
Yeah.
When they both answered, and they said, "They slept together."
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It does no justice to the scene for us describing it how we are. You
Yeah.
just gotta watch it because it's so dynamic
Mhm.
and it's all like it's real fluid with how the
It works.
It almost feels like they should be talking to each other on the phone, but they're going through these other people, and it just works.
Yeah.
It just works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it works. I can't think of another movie scene like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those scenes on the phone. It was one of the things that really drew me into the film, seeing it, and I found myself being so enthralled with it because I'd never seen anything like it before, and I was like, this is really interesting the way that they're showing this conversation and how like connected they feel, but they're also not connected because they're on the phone, you know. But it feels like they're there with one another, and then we get to see that in a different context once they're split. Now they literally have somebody in the middle of them. They have someone in between them. So now it feels like there's this distance, whereas before that phone scene was them
Together.
They really felt, you know, close with one another. Now this thing happened. Now there's a divide.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's pretty genius.
Yeah. But even, you know, from that context, this sets up a big point in the film where their relationship kind of feels a little tarnished because Harry wants to acknowledge what happened and moved on. Sally doesn't.
It's important to her.
Yeah, it's like that was important. We can't just glance by it. This is something that we should talk about and something that, we shouldn't be just trying to pass by.
Yeah. They don't. He doesn't handle it correctly either.
No, he doesn't.
Because they're like at the wedding, and he straight up like calls her a dog, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like,
The way he
This
says
is
it,
not
he's like, like a dog. 1 year is 7 years.
Yeah. And she goes, "Who's the dog in this scenario?"
he's like, you are.
And she goes, "I'm the dog. I'm the dog." And, walks away.
he drops the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big bro moment for me whenever she freaking slaps him. But then I'm kind of like, kind of had it coming,
Yeah,
though,
he's an
dude.
idiot,
You're
too.
dumb, bro.
Yes.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get past it. They really couldn't get past the thing that happened.
Yeah. But to give context to my favorite scene, at this point into the film, Sally is trying to move on. She's trying to forget Harry because of what was the way that the situation was handled. Harry keeps trying to apologize and, is calling her, leaving messages. She's not answering. And I think it's funny the way that he's trying to go about it, too, where, like, he's calling and acting like he's singing a song. Or he calls one moment where he's like, if you don't answer this phone, that means one of three things. A, you're not here right now and you are out or doing something and you can't get to the phone. B, you're deliberately denying my calls and listening to this as I'm talking. Or C, you're trapped under something heavy. If the option is either A or C, please call me back. And he's just trying everything that he can to get to talk to her, to try to see what's going on. And eventually she picks up the phone and tries to talk to him, and he's like, "Hey, I just, I wanted to apologize, and, I wanted to see if you're free for dinner again." And Sally eventually says, like, I'm not your consolation prize.
Yeah.
Like, I am not going to be there for you whenever you are down and in the dumps, just because you want someone to be there. Like, I am 30-something years old. I need to find somebody that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with because I want to start a family. And if you obviously don't want to be that, so I cannot do this anymore. And eventually Sally decides she's going to go to this New Year's Eve party that she previously would have attended with Harry, but now, since they're not speaking with one another, she goes with a random guy. And they're at this New Year's Eve party with this random guy. He's telling these crap jokes that she's not laughing at, not really understanding. And Sally's just having a bad time at this New Year's Eve party. And she keeps telling Marie, "I'm going to leave. Like, this is just not good for me. I'm not having fun." And Marie keeps trying to tell her, like, "It's almost midnight. Just stay a little bit longer, you know? Like, just stay until midnight, then you can go." And she's like, "No, this just isn't working for me. I'm going to go now." And meanwhile, while that's happening, Harry is spending New Year's Eve alone.
Just walking.
And walking around and is like...
Thinking.
Yeah, he's like, it's nice walking around right now in these streets because I got them all to myself. And, I just be out here and think and enjoy the weather. And it's just me. I like it. And, eventually he can't stop thinking about Sally. And they keep thinking about how their conversation about how women and men can't be friends and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And he eventually, you see this look kind of wash over Billy Crystal's face. And he eventually, sees, I need this woman in my life. This is the woman for me. And I need her in my life. Like, I've been trying to deny it, for all of these years, but I can't deny it anymore. She's the one for me.
It's the movie moment, man. When
So he starts, kind of jogging over to the New Year's Eve party before coming into a full-on sprint. Yeah, he's trying to hail taxis. Nobody's stopping for him.
Yeah.
And, eventually he just keeps running. He eventually goes up to the party, and as the countdown's happening, everyone around them is sharing New Year's Eve kisses and singing Auld Lang Syne and all this stuff.
Love it, dude.
We get one of the best quotes in all the entire movie here. But Harry goes up to her and sees Sally and starts eventually like professing his unrequited love for her, and it's just like, I have to tell you that I love you. I'm here because I love you. And Sally is like, what are you talking about? You don't love me and blah 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 and all this stuff. And she's like, you don't love me, you hate me. And he's like, well, what do you want me to say? And then Harry says, I love that you get cold when it's 71 degrees out. I love that it takes you an hour and a half to order a sandwich. I love that you get a little crinkle above your nose when you're looking at me like I'm nuts. I love that after I spend the day with you, I can still smell your perfume on my clothes. I love you're the last person I want to talk to before I go to sleep at night. And it's not because I'm lonely, and it's not because it's New Year's Eve. I came here tonight because when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible. And then
I'm crying.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting teary-eyed.
Yeah.
I was whenever he was saying that, I was like, this is it. This is the moment I was waiting for.
It was the moment that you are rooting for. Because the whole time you're like, they can't.
Yeah.
They can't. They're going to. It's like I want to almost describe it like a platonic relationship. It's like an earthquake where it's like, like it's never going to work. And then finally, they just finally love it, or levels, and it just gets.
It's always going to work.
Yeah. And I love, too, that, like, once he says all these things, Sally's, like, that's the one thing she's been waiting to hear. And she's like, you can't say that to me. Like, you make it so hard for me to hate you. I hate you. You make it incredibly hard for me to hate you. And then they eventually share that hug and that kiss with one another that we've been waiting for this entire movie.
And that hug and kiss specifically, it's like a sigh of relief because you're like,
yeah,
all is right in the world.
Yeah,
like finally, like that's the one. Like, you got her. Like,
yeah. And then one of the things that I do specifically love about the ending is that throughout the film we get these little, like what seems like interviews between old couples that have spent however so many years with one another, and every couple feels
so different.
Yes, they're all so different, but they also feel like each other person completes the other.
Oh yeah.
Like you get a couple that like the guy can't remember anything, and the woman in the relationship remembers every little detail, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's right."
Yeah.
And then you get another one where like the guy just doesn't talk at all, and then the woman, explains everything, and he kind of chimes in with one little piece.
Dude, that one couple that's always like talking
over one another,
and, like adding details that
they're like, "I was at this we were at this hotel,"
yeah,
and then like they just keep talking.
That's
over one
floor.
another.
It's like, it seems chaotic, but it works for them.
It works for them because that is their love language right there on display for everybody to see. And that's one of the things I love about this movie as well, is just them showing these different types of relationships and just how well suited they are for one another. And you can just see it on screen. And then we see Harry and Sally do the same thing at the end of the film, where they talk about their love story.
Talk about their marriage.
And they talk about their marriage and how they got married, and how whenever they had this really rich coconut cake, they had to have this rich chocolate sauce on the side, because if it got put onto the cake, then the chocolate sauce would, dissolve into the cake, and you wouldn't be able to taste the coconut anymore and all this stuff.
Stupid.
Yeah, like it's again, it's one of those things where like Sally is maintaining her identity, and Harry is just loving her all the more for it. It's great. It's a great ending.
A solid way to end it.
Yeah.
An absolute solid way.
Yeah. Love it. That's it for favorite scenes. Let's move to best quotes.
All right.
My first one is whenever Harry and Sally meet at the bookstore and they decide to go have lunch with one another, they're walking off, and Harry says, "You know, you may be the first attractive woman that I've not wanted to have sex with."
What does she say?
And
too?
she
She's
goes,
like,
"That's great, Harry." It's just a super funny quote.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's that same scene or same lunch that this quote that I have from Harry's. It says, he goes, "It is so nice that you can sit with someone and not have to talk."
He wasn't saying that like that though. He was saying it like, "Oh, I hated that scene when they went
Yeah.
out to dinner and like he was eating his salad so quick and they weren't just. It just felt so bad, dude."
Yeah.
You thought so?
Yes.
Yeah, because it just had the entire time before the lead up, she was like, he's saying, "I hope she says it first that it was a mistake before I do,
Yeah.
because it would crush her if she heard me say it first."
Yeah.
You know, and then they like, I don't know, they act like they share this mutual understanding of one another, where they both say that it's a mistake, but deep down they're thinking like,
No, I wanted to.
I didn't think it was a mistake.
Yeah.
But the fact that you are saying that it is confirms to me that you believe that it was. But deep down, they're both thinking, I don't think it was. But I just want that other person to be okay, you know? Yeah. What other quotes we got?
I had the she actually meowed was so funny to me, dude. So freaking funny to me.
Definitely. Any other quotes here?
No, I mean I had that giant one you had, and
Mm.
then her response to that was great.
Yeah, definitely. If there's no other quotes, then let's move into the bro moments.
Dude, my first bro moment was the first diner scene announcing that she had a great time
Yeah.
with someone. And
And everyone looking around. at her
everyone, it
going
was
like,
dead quiet.
Yeah.
And everybody literally stopped and just,
Yeah.
she had all eyes on her.
Super funny.
She said all eyes on me like Meek Mill.
Yeah.
My first bro moment is one of those interviews with the old couple, and they were like recounting their meeting with each other, and one of the guys says, 2 weeks and we were married. I was like, 2 freaking weeks, dude, that's
Yeah,
it.
That's crazy.
And then he's like, married 57 years. And
Yeah.
I'm like, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Back then,
When you know, you
time-
know.
time was, back then, time was wild.
Yeah. Another one for me was doing the wave at the Giants game. While it is a great scene, it was a bro moment for me just because I thought it was funny how somber of a conversation Harry and Jess were having. Even like the specific scenes where Jess is like, well, she said she didn't love you anymore. That's a symptom that there was something going wrong for a long time. And he goes, "Oh, really? Well, that symptom is effing my wife." And like while that's happening, like he's having this incredibly like somber moment. Like, my wife is leaving me, but then they keep having to stand up to do the wave.
It's
and all
so
this stuff.
dumb.
It's funny that like they're able to undercut it with like comedy, but still keep the conversation interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that scene. I thought it was funny.
Yeah. What about the scene where they're doing karaoke in that like little area? They're trying to get a
The
wedding
Radio
gift.
Shack, or no, Sharper Image.
Yeah, they're trying to get a wedding gift for them too, and he's like, "Oh, look at this thing! This thing is sick!" And he starts playing a song, and they're singing, and then he just stops, and you see it's his freaking ex,
Yeah.
his ex-wife with her
Yeah.
new boy, Ira or something,
Yeah.
and that even extends to whenever they go back to give him the gift, and he's like, absolutely just pissed,
Yeah.
and he's like, "You two are gonna be arguing all day about who gets what in this house." Like he was basically saying, all marriages are gonna end horribly.
Yeah.
Because mine did.
Hmm.
And it was a bro moment for me, for sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because he even, like, berates her a little bit. He was like, you don't feel anything. You don't even show that you're angry at all.
Mhm.
And then she's like, she really gets him back with it. Like,
yeah. And she's like, "You don't think I don't do anything like that because I won't go have sex with somebody?"
yeah. And then I immediately love to where he's like, "I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And they hug each other. But it's,
Yeah.
it was a heated scene for sure.
Yeah. Definitely. I had a bro moment too at the first New Year's Eve party that they go to.
Oh.
Whenever like,
Tell me you didn't feel it.
yeah,
Were
I
there-
did. I was thinking they were going to like, yeah, like, and you can just
feel
tell.
it, dude. You could
They're
feel
sitting
it.
there like,
The tension.
yeah, they're like, she says something about like, "Oh, now we can dance cheek to cheek," you know, and so they're dancing.
Because he shaved.
Yeah, and so they're dancing with one another, and we get these close-ups where like as they're turning, you see Billy Crystal just kind of get really somber, and you can tell like he's like, I really like this girl, and then we get to see Meg Ryan as well, and she's thinking the same thing. It looks like, and then eventually they're like, well, let's go outside and get some fresh air.
And
and as they're going outside, the countdown's happening, and they're looking at everybody sharing New Year's Eve's kiss, and the fireworks going off, and they kind of look at one another, and they're like, Happy New Year. Do a little, peck, and they try not to make a big deal out of it or anything, but that whole scene with one another, it just felt like you could tell that chemistry was there, that longing for one another, but they don't want to make things weird because they're friends, and yeah.
It was gas.
The entire time I was just like,
it was gas.
Just say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one for me, after, I guess I already mentioned it was Sally slapping Harry at the wedding.
At the wedding. Calling her a dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stupid.
Another one for me, actually. This is my last one, I'll say. We get like small little scenes whenever they're really having a good time with one another as friends. And we see how easy the holidays are.
They get a tree together.
They get a tree, two people pick it up, they walk it out and all this stuff. But whenever they fight and they're not talking to one another, she's doing it by herself, and she's dragging that tree along and like trying to pick one out that she can carry by herself and all this stuff. And I don't know, it was a bro moment for me, but also just a really good way of in the writing aspect of showing just how made for each other these guys are. Like, they are going to work as a team to carry this tree to their house, to then decorate it and, prepare for Christmas for one another. Whereas now she's got to do it all by herself, and she is struggling, And I don't know, it's like little things like that where like they show you one scene in the beginning where things were easy, and then they show it to you when one of the people is not in the context of it, and you're like, this is a struggle.
It's a major difference.
Yeah. Really good.
What once was happy and joyful is now like like you were saying, a struggle to get through. It was good.
I think the biggest bro moment that we have yet to talk about is when she fakes having a good time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And she corrects Harry and she says, like, and Harry's like, I know I've made every woman have a good time.
Do that O face.
Do that O face. And do that O face. And he's like, I know I have. She's like, I guarantee you haven't. Like,
she's like, do the math.
I know a couple people have at least faked it. Like statistically, it's just had to have happened.
There's no way. And he's like, no. And then he gets like kind of quiet. And then all of a sudden,
she starts going, oh.
I was about to start yelling.
God. And works it up to where she's like,
she starts going,
it is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the film, though. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, whenever I first heard about When Harry Met Sally, it was seeing this scene out of context.
Really?
And not knowing what was happening. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
For that to be the first.
But, yeah, that had to be the biggest bro moment, because I was like, I would get so embarrassed.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. When I get embarrassed, I get hot, and I get red.
Yeah, I get real flushed.
I get flushed. Seeing Billy Crystal keep his composure, I would have been red as a beet, dude. Like I probably would have left. I'm not gonna lie.
Really?
Like, I probably would have got up and been like, I'm out. I can't deal with this. I get secondhand embarrassment so bad. Like, he's a better man than me, bro. Because I would have just, as soon as it would have been happening, I'd be like, all right, I'm out. like I can't deal with this.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd do in that situation. I'd probably look at everyone and be like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening.
Or being like, dude, stop. Okay, I get it.
Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Next time we go out to eat.
You won't. You're too scared. In a Denny's.
No, F Denny's.
Full of children just going.
I hate Denny's. I can't stand Denny's anymore, although it's so good.
Yeah.
True. That's
Any other bro moments? Okay. Well, speaking of that scene, while we go into facts with the bros, that scene was actually filmed in Katz Deli, which is an actual restaurant in New York on East Houston Street. And the table that the scene was filmed at now has a plaque on it that reads, "Where Harry Met Sally. Hope you have what she had."
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And then it's actually interesting. For that scene, the original script called for Harry and Sally to merely talk about women faking it until Meg Ryan actually suggested that Sally really fake one at the table. And the director, Rob Reiner, loved the idea and put it into the script. And then, get this, before they actually filmed that scene, Rob Reiner demonstrated the scene in front of the entire cast and crew, including his own mother.
Oh, no! That is... The mom's got to be like...
Yeah.
What is she supposed to...
Yeah. I thought that was wild. I was laughing at it. I had to break
That's
it up.
crazy.
You got to do it. That's the director's job right there.
Yeah.
I want it to be just like this. You got to put your hand just like that
Yeah.
and say these words.
Yeah.
Pause, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't do it.
To make this movie, though, it took $16 million to make this movie.
Okay.
Opening weekend, it made $1,094,000. Gross for U.S. and Canada was $93.1 million, and gross worldwide was $93.3 million.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it definitely made its money.
Absolute hit.
Definitely.
Definitely knows what it's there for.
Yeah. I also saw that this got Oscar nominated for Best Writing in its year.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
It deserves it.
Easily,
And
man.
And what I saw was it's actually a film based off the director's experience.
Mm.
It's based off his post-divorce as a single man, and coincidentally, Reiner met his current wife during the making of this film.
Oh,
wow.
that is super cool.
That
So-
is cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I had seen that a couple of concepts that came through the movie was actually based on Rob Reiner's interactions with the writer, Nora Ephron. And specifically the concept of Sally being a picky eater was based on the woman that wrote the script.
Really?
Yeah, years after the movie came out, Ephron was on a plane, and she ended up ordering something that was, like, incredibly precise. And the stewardess looked at her and said, "Have you ever seen When Harry Met Sally?"
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
I
She's
guess
like, actually, yes.
yeah, it was said that whenever that was the movie was being written, Rob had even noticed certain little things about Nora that he then said had to, be characteristics of Sally. So, yeah.
That's very real.
Yeah.
I had read too that the segment of married couples are actually real stories that he collected for the movie.
Yeah, I saw it too.
That's so cool.
It's cool to see that, like, these stories, they weren't the real people. He hired actors to portray them out, but they're real stories that just happen. They work and they live happily ever after.
Yeah. That's
It's great.
My last fact that I thought was pretty cool was the scene where it took off the 4 leads, where the 4 phone calls basically, where they're on the same. It took 60 shots to nail that.
Yeah, that was just how the dialogue worked too. It's like hard. It's hard
There's
to
so
get it
much
to work
thought.
correctly.
Even the editing and everything that
Yeah.
goes into it too, yeah. Because think about it. You got to have, like, the correct amount of timing, spacing between lines, to where it doesn't sound like a huge jumbled mess.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be pretty hard, I would
Mhm.
think. A couple more here for me. I did not know this, but Harry and Sally's final interview at the end of the film was completely improvised.
Was it really?
Yeah. Which makes me love it even more. And it
yeah.
makes me feel like they really understood their characters, which I like so
Mhm.
much more. But this was a kind of crazy one for me. I found out here because Tom Hanks would then go on to do another film written by the same writer.
With freaking Meg Ryan.
Yes. But he was offered this role of Harry, and he turned it down, saying that the film was too lightweight.
Tom Hanks turned this down?
Yeah.
Then he saw the money bags and he said, "All right."
Yeah, and then did Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah.
But I also saw Michael Keaton was actually considered for the role as well. Yeah.
Birdman?
Yeah, Batman, dude. Yeah,
I don't know.
Don't know. Same with Bill. They ended up eventually landing on Billy Crystal, who we have. Which did you guys know Billy Crystal plays Mike Wazowski?
Does he really?
Yeah, he is the voice of Mike Wazowski.
No, I never knew that.
Yeah. So Billy Crystal, whenever he has that moment in the film, whenever he's really depressed after the divorce, to help him capture the mood of being a newly divorced single man, apparently he would hole himself up in his hotel room in isolation deliberately for like days on end, and would keep himself away from the cast and crew to kind of like build up that feeling of isolation. So that way, whenever it came to fill his scenes, he would feel like he was in that mood.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Only other one that I have here, I guess it was pretty this film was pretty notorious for not being able to find a name. And Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron would go back and forth on what it was that they wanted the film's title to be.
Oh, do you have any like working titles or anything?
I do. I've got a couple.
Okay,
actually.
hold on. What could it be? Like, I couldn't even imagine. It's just When Harry Met Sally. It just feels.
Yeah. And this is the thing too. Even now, Nora Ephron still thinks the title is not right. Like, she says that if she was able to go and change the title, she would.
What would she change it to? I
I'm
just
not
feel
sure.
like it's exactly what the movie is.
Yeah, I'm not sure because while they did settle on this title originally, a producer named Andrew Scheinman, and Rob Reiner considered the following working titles: Just Friends, Playing Melancholy Baby, Boy Meets Girl,
Hate it.
Blue Moon, Words of Love, It Had to Be You,
I like that.
Harry, This Is Sally, and How They Met.
I like It Had to Be You.
It Had to Be You. Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of all of them, I'd like that.
Yeah.
I think that would be the most.
Boy Meets Girl.
Yeah. There's a couple that are bad.
Somebody needs to get fired for that one, dude. That's not anything.
Yeah. But eventually they ended up landing on what we now have is
When Harry Met Sally.
When Harry Met Sally.
That just feels great.
Yeah. I think so too. But that's about it for Facts with the Bros for me.
Yeah, me as well.
All right. If that's it for the facts, then let's move into what didn't work.
What didn't work is sometimes this movie hits too close to home sometimes.
It's the hard thing about this category. We were doing great movies. It's like,
Yeah.
do I just say something stupid or what do I say? Like,
This movie was good. There wasn't nothing really that I didn't like. There wasn't nothing that pulled away from my experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I have to agree.
This movie was just good in general. Like I said in the beginning, I was able just to watch it fully through, no distractions, and it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think I have anything here.
nothing to add.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then let's move into what did work. Because personally, I think that this film utilizes its time and pacing incredibly well.
Oh, yeah.
This movie is what, an
Hour and a
40?
half.
Hour and a half.
It's like an hour 30 something. Like,
yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like that.
No. It doesn't feel that. And even if it did, you would be surprised by how fast it goes because of the what I think is really sharp writing and also incredible acting.
Oh,
the actors
dude.
kill
from
it.
from Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal.
They killed it. The movie literally hinges on their dialogue and the charisma they have together, the relationship they have together.
Yeah.
If one of those two pillars are bad, the movie sucks.
Yeah.
And thankfully, they did them both fantastic. The writing, it is so incredibly funny, dude. It is so funny when you don't expect it to be. It is sharp. It's just all around great.
Yeah. I even really love their chemistry.
Yeah.
Their chemistry feels real. And it's one of those things where it's so hard to capture what feels real in a romantic comedy, romance type movie because they are actors portraying a role. But there's just these little moments in certain films where you're like, that feels real right there. That attraction feels real. And I get that with this movie and with the before movies.
Yeah.
All of that.
It
like,
really has the same vibe as the Before trilogy to me.
yeah.
It has the same vibe, especially with the amount of dialogue they have together.
Mm-hmm.
Remind me, especially when they're on the train. And they're
Yeah,
just talking.
just sitting and talking and
Yeah.
asking deep questions. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it works. It works so very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think another thing that really works for me is not only the soundtrack that gets used throughout the film. You know, you got a lot of Louis Armstrong and jazz and stuff like that. But then you also got original pieces scored by Harry Connick Jr. That I think work out really well too. I think they serve the movie's purpose, and yeah.
I really like how the setting, how they chose Chicago and New York and L.A. I believe, right? No.
No, I think it's just Chicago, New York.
With two big cities. There's no way.
Full of millions of people.
Yeah,
Yes, there's
it
no way I'm
serves
ever
to be
gonna-
like this is destiny.
Yeah, and they can never for a moment not stop thinking about one another.
Yeah.
And like, even a guy like Harry, who is like actively going out and sleeping with hundreds of women, it feels like he cannot stop thinking about Sally.
Yeah.
And always
Yeah.
ends up going back to her. You
Yeah.
know?
Dude, do you know that song? Whoa.
No.
Bruh.
You just made that up.
No, I swear.
He's ad-libbing on the spot.
No, I swear. After I'll show you. I'll show you. I think it's called That Girl. And I swear. Look up Sally, That Girl.
Okay.
I promise you. That's what he was thinking when he was with those chicks.
That's so
Okay.
good.
You were saying about the setting. I really enjoy the setting here.
Yeah. It just,
It's the only one that makes sense. Big cities. You
Well,
can
it just-
easily.
yeah, the big city. It's crazy because in a story like this, where you're like, oh, they're meant to be together, and now they're in such big environments where it feels almost impossible to find someone
Exactly.
like that, like
Yeah.
a needle in a haystack.
It's meant to be.
And
Yeah.
in this time, there's no AOL like emails to send it out. or
You saw the
anything.
computer she was typing on, dude. It's
Yeah.
like old.
Yeah.
Like there was no interaction. There's no way. It was just
It's not
by
like
pure,
hit me up on
genuine
Facebook.
Yeah.
interaction and by like making appointments.
Yeah.
And that the fact that they ran into each other 5 years again and then 5 years again
Yeah.
later, that has to mean something.
Yeah.
And
It's
it just works
significant.
perfect for them because you're rooting for them. Just like, yes, like this relationship needs to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they run each other, you're like, finally.
Yeah. Yeah. I also have to say, I think the cinematography here is really beautiful.
Next thing I was gonna say, out of my mouth, right there.
I love witnessing the seasons change in New York and like seeing just the beautiful fall colors
Mhm.
and then watching, Christmas come and, then it, leave and spring come and like
Yeah.
it's just really simple,
It is
beautiful cinematography.
but it's impactful.
Yeah, and that was what I was going to say. I think that like it's really simple. The editing also I really enjoy as well, is it being really simple, but
yeah.
I think that they both, while they are so simple, I think it's done purposefully so because they want this story to take the front seat.
Yeah.
And I think that being the forefront of what the story really is about rather than the way it looks adds so much more to the film. Because it's not about looking pretty here, but it just so happens
still
to,
does.
and it's one of those things where I'm like, man, they're walking through Central Park and I see all these leaves turning colors. I'm like, this is beautiful.
That
like, I love
reminds me
this.
of fall.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why whenever I was watching this film, I was like, man, this feels like a fall
It does.
movie. Like
It-
going from that transition period, the month of November, like going from Thanksgiving to Christmas feels like.
Winter Wonderland.
Yeah. And then lastly, I got to say, wardrobe department
Killing it,
went hard.
dude. When he
Like-
was wearing that, like,
The blazer with
yeah.
the shirt under and the jeans.
I was thinking
everything.
the knit the sweater he had
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I was like, I gotta give you one of those.
Yeah, the entire time I was like, man, Harry's fits go hard.
He
dude.
does.
I
He
need-
looks
good. How
I need to get some Harry's fits, bro. Yeah, I really enjoyed just the way that everyone was dressing in the film. It was great.
Yeah.
The entire time I was like,
You inspired?
I need some brown loafers, man. I need
Christmas
that.
is coming up.
Yeah, I need that and a denim shirt.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. All of the above, man. Just make this movie top notch.
Yeah.
Cut above the rest.
All right. If that's it for what did work, who wins this movie?
Who you choosing?
How can you pick?
I mean, if
Harry met Sally. It's kind
Yeah.
of two of the most important people.
Yeah.
I'm picking Harry.
yeah, I gotta pick Harry.
Like I'm saying,
I
I
think
can't do
I
it.
side more with Harry. I'm picking Harry.
I'm picking Billy Crystal.
I think at the end of the day, when I think about this movie, I think about how much charisma Billy Crystal exudes throughout the
Yeah.
film. It makes me only think of him.
Yeah.
Like, I think specifically when he's on the phone, like, if you want to answer that phone, pick
Yeah.
it up now because I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, he's like singing to the answering machine and stuff like that. I'm like, I feel like this just fits.
Yeah.
You know? So-
He to me, he's so interesting to look at too, because when he talks, it's almost like this real flat kind of deadpan, like matter of fact.
yeah.
And he's not very like animated with his face, like his eyebrows don't move very much. He's just real like flat. I even think about that scene where they're doing the accents, and he just looks like his face just doesn't change.
Yeah.
He just looks so stationary, and I don't know. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah.
So he wins it.
All right. What are the themes here?
That's what I was going to ask you about, because the whole dynamic of them not wanting to confront their love for each other, was that the film trying to have like a stake of like what is it I left it not not necessarily understanding, but not knowing where they wanted to go with that theme of like it's two people not willing to put down, like not willing to have joy for themselves or pride getting in the way of their love. What I mean, what'd you really get out of it? I couldn't
I don't know.
pick one.
I think it's putting your pride aside and
But it's also a
and
lot
true
about
love being true love, because in my opinion, Sally was like kind of the person who's like she was high maintenance. She was high maintenance, and so she has that image. So she has to be held high, like her image has to be. Maybe she didn't think Harry was like the right person for her
I don't know.
because of her image and how high maintenance she is, and how he's just like really chilled and laid back and doesn't care.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But then he also proves to be somewhat high maintenance too.
Yeah.
You know, in his own ways, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately it is about personal growth, right? Like
Yeah.
as cliche as that sounds, they're not the same people that they were when they first met.
Yeah, exactly.
12 years has done a number on these people,
Yeah.
and the core characteristics they still have, but those flimsy things that they thought were one way, switching it up later it's just about growing and
Yeah.
experiencing life and going through divorce, through, not wanting to have kids with that guy, and just learning who you want to be and who you want to be with.
Yeah. And eventually finding your soulmate
Yeah.
and knowing who that is. Yeah. I agree.
Want to start your life as soon as possible.
Yep. All right. Is that it for the theme?
I think so.
All right. It's come down to the end of the wire. What are we rating this?
I'll go first. I give it an 8.
I'm giving this a 9.
Okay. I am as well.
9?
Yeah. I do think this is going to be another one of those movies where the more I watch it, it's just going to be like,
The higher it gets.
why was I thinking of giving it a 9? You know?
Yeah, it's a good one, man.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this one,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that you guys did too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. With that being said, it's the end of the episode. So
Yeah.
thank you guys for tuning in. If you stayed all the way to the end, we appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube, why don't you leave us a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on the video as well. Let us know what you're thinking. If you are watching on YouTube as well, hit the bell so that way you can be notified whenever we upload videos every week. If you're not watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, you're probably listening on a podcast app. That's probably on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, or etc. Whatever you got. And if you're listening there, why don't you leave us a rate and review? It would really help us out. And let us know what you're thinking there. If you don't want to leave, rate and reviews, or you're thinking maybe I don't want to leave something public like that, you can reach out to us privately through our episode descriptions. We've got our Instagram as well as our Letterboxd accounts and an email address. So if you guys want to reach out there and let us know what you're thinking through those platforms, you can also do that. So with that being said, You're going to reveal the next pick for next week, which is Nick's pick.
It is my pick. I've chosen this movie selfishly, not with any thematic reason at all.
Okay.
I could pull a thematic reason out of my booty hole though, if I tried. If I tried
really
hard
wanted
enough. If I really wanted to. But I was playing Spider-Man 2, loved that film, and it got me to think about all of the Spider-Man movies that I loved so much. And one of the ones that I wanted to go back to is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That is the movie we're doing. Came out in 2018. It's animated. It is the most interesting animation I have seen. It
So
is
good.
It is literally a comic book put to screen.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, when I watched this in theaters, I was absolutely blown away. And I think it has a very touching story on a side of Spider-Man we don't see. I mean, Peter Parker is the one we see all the time on screen.
Yep.
But it's not Peter. It's a new story.
Yeah.
But it still has all of the great, responsibilities of being Spider-Man and what that truly means to not only Peter but to this other guy and to us.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's incredibly wholesome, and
it is. And this is one of those movies as well where I watched it for the first time and I was like, on the first watch, I was like, that was good. And then it took me some years to come back to it, and then eventually my niece and nephew wanted to watch it again. And I watched it with them. I don't know what it was, but I watched it that second time, and I immediately was kicking myself in the butt, thinking like, why didn't I think that this was better the first time that I had watched it? I ended up crying like the second time.
yeah.
And like by the end of it, that ending monologue where he's like, you could wear the mask. Like I'm like, I could. It's so good.
Yes.
And, I'm excited to watch it again.
And I'm gonna say something controversial, and I really do think that this is the best Spider-Man movie to date, of all of them, live action or not.
Even better than Spider-Man 2?
I think so. I think Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Like,
it's a respectable take.
Honestly, it's hard. I'm hard pressed to think of a movie that makes me feel the way I do with this one. Yeah, and now that we know that it's going to be a trilogy, it might be interesting to see what Across the Spider-Verse brings us.
Yeah, definitely. I've yet to see the second one. So.
Yeah,
The second one's super good too.
and it's on Netflix. Across is. This one, unfortunately, it was on Netflix for a while, but they took it off. So if you want to watch it, it's on Fubo. It's on FX Now. But other than that, you're gonna have to go ahead and rent it.
Okay. All right. Well, if you got any of those streaming platforms, or if you own the movie, pop it in and tune in next week to hear what we have to say about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. As always, this has been the Film Bros Podcast. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.